Imagine this, you're a Hollywood superstar. You've made your millions, earned your fame, and suddenly you get that spark of inspiration, an idea for a movie so bold, so personal, that you believe only you can bring it to life. The studios don't see your vision, the investors pull back, and everyone around you says it's too risky, but you don't listen. You decide to bet on yourself, you write the script, you produce it, and sometimes you even direct it. You pour your savings and soul into the project because you believe the world will finally see your masterpiece. But when the lights dim and the credits roll, everything collapses. Critics tear it apart, audiences walk out, and your passion project becomes a punchline. In today's story, we're diving deep into the brutal reality of actors who didn't just star in box office disasters, they financed them. From legendary icons to rising stars, these stories prove that Hollywood dreams can quickly turn into multi-million-dollar nightmares. Tom Green, the $14 million disaster. In the early 2000s, Tom Green was everywhere. MTV's Wild Child, known for his fearless and unpredictable comedy. So when Hollywood offered him a blank check to make his own movie, he jumped at the chance. Freddy Got Fingered was meant to be his masterpiece, a bold, chaotic comedy that would prove he could turn shock humor into box office gold. Green didn't just star in it, he wrote, directed, and even invested his own money to make it exactly how he wanted. But that gamble backfired spectacularly. The $14 million movie bombed, with critics calling it one of the worst films ever made. It earned less than $80,000 internationally, and audiences rejected it instantly. Overnight, Green went from Hollywood's next big thing to a cautionary tale about what happens when creative freedom goes unchecked. His confidence wasn't the problem. It was his belief that no one else could be right. In the end, Freddy Got Fingered became less of a movie and more of a warning. Proof that in Hollywood, one bad decision can erase years of success in a single weekend. And for Tom Green, that weekend ended a career that had once seemed unstoppable. It showed that even in comedy, there's a fine line between fearless and foolish, and crossing it can cost everything. Kirk Cameron, When Faith Met Failure. Fast forward to 2014, Kirk Cameron, once a beloved teen idol from Growing Pains, wanted to make a movie that would save Christmas. The concept was simple: reclaim the holiday's spiritual meaning and reject its commercialization. Cameron believed in the mission so deeply that he personally financed the film, putting up around $500,000. Sounded like an easy win. Christian films were booming, and Christmas stories always had an audience. But Saving Christmas became something else entirely. The movie earned a miserable 1.3 rating on IMDb, one of the lowest in film history. Social media mocked it endlessly, and audiences rejected it for being preachy and poorly made. Even though it grossed $2.7 million at the box office, the marketing, theater cuts, and distribution wiped out any profit. Cameron didn't just lose money, he lost credibility. The project he hoped would inspire millions instead ended up redefining him as the face of one of the most infamous flops of the decade. Lawrence Fishburne, the Oscar-level flop. Lawrence Fishburne wasn't just another actor chasing fame, he was one of the most respected performers in Hollywood. Fresh off the success of The Matrix, he had global recognition, critical respect, and the rare power to make any project he wanted. So when he decided to adapt his own stage play, Once in the Life, into a feature film, it felt like a natural next step. He wasn't chasing money or spectacle, he was chasing meaning. Fishburne wrote, directed, and financed the entire project himself, convinced that audiences would embrace his honest story about loyalty, struggle, and redemption. But the reality was far colder. The movie never connected. It wasn't marketed properly. The release was limited, and when it finally hit theaters, it made less than $20,000, an unthinkable number for a star of his caliber. Critics barely noticed it, and those who did said the film felt too heavy and lacked commercial appeal. For Fishburne, the loss wasn't just financial, it was emotional. He poured his heart into a story that meant everything to him, only to watch Hollywood ignore it completely. The heartbreak was that he didn't fail because of arrogance. He failed because he believed substance would still triumph over spectacle. Sadly, in that era, audiences wanted excitement, not quiet truth. Sylvester Stallone, The Race That Went Nowhere. By 2001, Sylvester Stallone had already built two of the most iconic movie franchises in history, Rocky and Rambo, but he was tired of being boxed in as the muscle-bound hero. He wanted to prove he could deliver something more emotional, something with depth. That's when Driven was born, a passion project he wrote himself, a story about redemption, rivalry, and the human spirit set in the high-speed world of racing. Stallone believed this was the film that would redefine him as a serious actor and writer. Everything seemed right on paper. Racing movies were gaining popularity, and with his star power, investors lined up to join. The production had sleek cars, intense action, and a strong cast. But when the film hit theaters, the response was brutal. Critics slammed it for being shallow and overproduced. Viewers didn't feel the emotion Stallone was aiming for. They just saw another big-budget spectacle with no heart. The movie lost millions, and Stallone's personal investment vanished along with it. The irony was hard to ignore. The man who had once risked everything to make Rocky and turned it into a global phenomenon had now risked it all again, and lost. Driven was supposed to be his rebirth, but instead, it became a painful reminder that even legends can misread the moment. Stallone's failure wasn't about lack of effort, it was about timing. The world had moved on, and he was still racing toward a past that no longer existed. Milla Jovovich and Paul W.S. Anderson, the fantasy that failed. Milla Jovovich and Paul W.S. Anderson weren't just a Hollywood couple, they were a proven powerhouse. Together, they turned the Resident Evil franchise into a billion-dollar empire. They had loyal fans, a track record of hits, and the kind of creative chemistry that most filmmakers only dream of. So when they announced In the Lost Lands, a dark fantasy epic based on a George R.R. Martin short story, expectations were sky high. The couple poured their money, time, and passion into the $55 million project through their own production company, believing it would mark the start of a new era for them beyond zombie action. But instead of a triumph, they walked straight into a storm. Critics shredded the movie, calling it confusing, lifeless, and visually messy. Fans who once adored the couple's work couldn't connect with the story, describing it as a patchwork of ideas that never came together. Despite its massive budget and international release, the movie barely crossed $6 million worldwide, a tiny fraction of what they'd invested. The failure hit harder because it wasn't just about money, it was about identity. After years of success, In the Lost Lands made audiences wonder if the duo had lost their creative spark. It was a brutal reminder that even successful formulas can collapse when ambition outweighs execution. For Jovovich and Anderson, the fantasy they built turned into a very real nightmare. Francis Ford Coppola, the dream that broke the legend. Francis Ford Coppola, the genius behind The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, could have retired a legend. But instead, he chased one last dream, a sci-fi epic called Megalopolis. For decades, he'd been obsessed with making it, and when no studio would take the risk, he decided to fund it himself, pouring $120 million of his own money into the project. What started as a vision of artistic freedom quickly turned into chaos. Crew members left, rewrites piled up, and actors reportedly struggled to understand the story. By the time Megalopolis hit theaters, it was already infamous. The film earned only $14 million worldwide, leaving Coppola with massive losses. But the real pain wasn't financial. It was personal. This was meant to be his grand statement, his final masterpiece. Instead, it became a reminder that even the greatest filmmakers can misjudge their audience. In the end, Megalopolis proved that in Hollywood, no one, not even a legend, is beyond failure. The ego that cost millions. What connects all these stories is one hard truth. Fame doesn't protect you from failure. In Hollywood, success can make you believe you're unstoppable, but the moment you lose touch with your audience, everything falls apart. Tom Green thought his wild humor would always sell. Stallone believed star power could outshine a weak script. Coppola trusted that genius alone could carry a movie. But passion without perspective turns into ego. And ego burns cash faster than any box office flop. Each of these actors learned the same lesson. In Hollywood, confidence can build empires or destroy them. And when you start creating for yourself instead of the audience, you risk losing both your fortune and your career. Because in the end, the audience is the ultimate judge, not your fame, not your legacy, and not your past hits. Every movie is a new test, and no one, not even a legend, is guaranteed to pass. That's what makes Hollywood both brutal and beautiful. One great decision can make you a star again, and one wrong move can erase everything overnight. Vin Diesel, the rare happy ending. Not every self-financed movie ends in disaster. Before the fame, the cars, and the billion-dollar franchises, Vin Diesel was just another struggling actor trying to get noticed in New York. Tired of waiting for a big break, he decided to create his own opportunity. In 1997, he poured $47,000 of his own savings into a small independent film called Strays, a raw story about street life, loyalty, and ambition. He wrote it, directed it, and starred in it, determined to prove he could carry a film from start to finish. When Strays was released, it barely made a sound. The box office was tiny, and critics gave it mixed reviews, calling it promising but uneven. For most people, that would have been the end of the story. Another passion project that failed to connect, but fate had other plans. One copy of Strays landed in the hands of Steven Spielberg, who was so impressed by Diesel's intensity and screen presence that he personally cast him in Saving Private Ryan. That single moment changed everything. From that one independent film came a career that would dominate Hollywood. It led to The Fast and the Furious, XXX, and Riddick, franchises that turned Diesel into one of the most bankable stars on Earth. What looked like a financial failure turned out to be the smartest investment of his life, as proof that sometimes losing money doesn't mean losing momentum, and that one small project made with pure belief can open the biggest doors imaginable. Vin Diesel's story is a reminder that the same gamble that destroys others can, in rare cases, create legends. The thin line between genius and madness. In the end, these stories are about the fine line between artistic genius and reckless ambition. For every Vin Diesel who turns failure into fortune, there are dozens of stars who lose millions chasing a dream that never connects. Hollywood rewards risk takers, but it also punishes them brutally when the audience doesn't buy in. So the next time you see a movie flop, remember, behind that failure might be someone who gave everything they had to make it real. Some gambles destroy careers, others create legends. Which side would you fall on if it were your dream on the line? If you enjoyed this breakdown of Hollywood's biggest self-made disasters, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned, because the next story might just change the way you see your favorite stars forever.